Long before the last shadows fell over Middle-earth, and before the fall of Sauron, there existed a forgotten evil, older than the mountains, older than the light of the stars themselves. Even Gandalf never spoke of it, not because he did not know, but because some truths are better left buried. Deep beneath the forest of Mirkwood, where no sunlight ever touches the ground, lies a network of roots so ancient that they whisper travelers who lose their way. There hear their name softly, almost lovingly, as if the earth itself is calling to them. There was once an elf named Thalorian. He was no ordinary elf of Rivendell or Lothlorien, but a warden of forgotten paths. His task was simple: never go beneath the roots. But curiosity is a more dangerous enemy than darkness. One night when the sky was heavy and not a single star was visible, Thalorian heard something, not with his ears, but in his mind. Come closer. He followed the voice, which led him to an opening in the ground, a slit between the roots from which cold air rose, as if the earth was breathing. Without thinking, he descended. Deeper and deeper, until he realized the roots around him were not still. They moved slowly, as if they could feel him. The tunnels beneath the earth were no natural caves. They were shaped, grown like veins of something alive. And then he saw it. An enormous chamber as vast as a palace, filled with a black pulsing heart of wood and shadow roots, came together into that thing and disappeared into it as if it fed on them. And then it opened its eyes. Not two, but hundreds. Pale, empty eyes appeared everywhere in the wood, staring at him, and the voice he had heard before was now everywhere at once. "You have found us." Thalorian tried to flee, but his body would not move. Roots wrapped around his legs, soft at first, almost gentle, and then tighter. He felt no pain. That was the worst part. Only a deep growing peace, as if he was being taken into something greater. Days later, or perhaps years, for time meant nothing. There he came back to the surface. But he was no longer alone. His eyes were black now, and beneath his skin something moved. Those who saw him felt an unexplainable dread. Animals fled. He no longer spoke, except sometimes in a whisper that was not his own. "We grow." Soon after, strange things began to happen in Mirkwood. The trees grew faster, but twisted. Their branches seemed to reach for travelers, and those who stayed too long vanished. But it did not stop in the forest. Months later, rumors reached even the farthest corners of Middle-earth. In villages near the Shire, people began to speak of dreams. Dark dreams in which they walked beneath the ground through endless tunnels of roots, while a voice called to them. "Come closer." At first they laughed it off, until the disappearances began. A hobbit woke in the night, walked outside, and was never seen again. Only a small crack in the earth remained, as if something had pulled him down. In other villages, the same thing happened. People stood up without memory, walked into the fields, and vanished into the ground, as if the earth had swallowed them. And then they came back, just like Thalorian. But they were changed. Their eyes dark, their voices hollow. Their skin sometimes seemed to move, as if something beneath it was still growing. They spoke little, but when they did, it was always the same. "We grow." Slowly the roots spread beneath houses, beneath roads, beneath entire cities. No one saw them, but everyone felt them, a constant presence under their feet, waiting, listening. Even the wise felt it, a growing unease, an ancient evil, unlike anything Sauron had ever created. This was older, quieter, and more patient. No army, no war, only growth. And on one night, when the moon vanished completely and the world was swallowed in darkness, it happened. Across all of Middle-earth at once cracks began to appear in the ground. Not large, but enough. From every crack came a whisper, soft, irresistible. "Come closer," and deep beneath everything, beneath mountains, beneath rivers, beneath every step ever taken, the heart began to beat faster. Not of wood, not of roots, but of something alive, something that remembered, and something that had finally awakened. We grow long after the whispers began, and the roots spread across all of Middle-earth. Something else grew with them. Not fear anymore, but acceptance. In villages and cities, people no longer feared the voice. They listened to it as if it were a promise. Others called it a calling, and more they vanished willingly. They walked out at night barefoot on the cold earth and knelt by the cracks in the ground, without force, without struggle, as if they were coming home. Even in the green hills of the Shire, nothing remained untouched. Hobbits who once laughed and celebrated grew silent. Their songs faded, replaced by whispers no one could understand. Beneath the ancient forests of Mirkwood, the heart grew larger, older than any memory. The eyes that once watched the Lorien were now countless, and they were no longer watching alone. They saw everything, and deep within the roots the Lorien still lived, not as an elf, but as something in between. He felt every step upon the earth, every vibration, every thought that lingered too long in silence. He was no longer an individual, but a voice among many, a consciousness spread through everything that grew. We are close. The wise tried to stop it. Some traveled to Rivendell, others searched forgotten books, but no story spoke of this evil, for this was not an evil that destroyed. It replaced. The earth itself began to change. Grass grew thicker, trees taller, but their roots deeper and hungrier. Rivers shifted their course as if avoiding or following something. And then came the final night. No stars, no moon, only silence. Across the world the wind stopped, animals froze. People held their breath without knowing why, and then the ground began to breathe. Not in one place, but everywhere the earth moved softly like a chest filling and emptying. Houses cracked, roads split, and from countless places the roots emerged no longer hidden, but visible, alive and endless. People did not fall into the earth. The earth came to them. Roots wrapped around feet, hands, bodies, not with violence but with a calm certainty, as if they had always belonged to something greater. There were no screams, only whispers, "We grow." In Mirkwood the heart burst open, not in destruction but in revelation. What once seemed like wood and shadow was only a form. Beneath it lay something older, something without a name, a consciousness without beginning. Now fully awakened, spreading through every root, every tree, every vein of the world. The Lorien saw it, and for the first time since his descent he felt something like understanding. Not fear, but truth. There had never been a war, no enemy, no battle, only a return. The divide between land and life, between body and earth, faded completely. People still stood, but they were no longer alone in their thoughts. Every step, every breath, every gaze was shared. One consciousness, one growth, one silence. And then the whisper faded, not because it ended, but because there was no one left to hear it as something separate. Middle-earth remained. The hills, the forests, the rivers, everything looked the same, but nothing was separate anymore. Deep beneath everything the heart beat slowly and endlessly, not waiting, not hungry, but complete. And if a voice ever seemed to move through the wind again, it was no longer a call, but a memory we have become what has always been, and there will never again be anyone who needs to answer. Story made by Storytelling Joe.